Okay, this video is how to do a very simple slipper on the blue Nifty Knitted Loom. I do have a sock loom and I could probably do the same idea on that, but I decided since a lot of people have the Nifty Knitter set or have these circular sets, I would try to do it on here. And by simple, I mean this is what the slipper is. That's basically all the slipper is, and it's all done in one piece. Ironically, I was using scrap ball yarn, and I actually had enough of this white color, and it just started going into the next color at the very end. So that's what we're going to show. So what you're going to want, excuse me, and I'm going to use just some red heart, even though you may want to switch up. And before I begin, if you have hardwood floors or something, these are obviously going to be slippery, so you're going to want to find, and I don't know much about this, something to put on the bottom to kind of help with gripping. If that's going to be an issue for you, you can try it, walk around, see if you fall. If you do, you can probably find some stuff at Joann's or someplace like that that you could attach to the bottom just to give you a little traction. So this is what you want to do. You're going to probably want a row counter. Now, again, this goes by your foot. I can't really sit here and say do so many rows of this and that because everyone's foot's different. Mine is probably about a size 8, 8.5 depending on the shoe, but I actually ended up making this a little too big once I got it done because I was just kind of playing around with the idea. While I still had it on the loom, when it was like looking like this, I could actually put my foot inside this part to kind of see how I was doing. Keep in mind that some of your yarns might have a little stretch to them, or that they may stretch over time, so you may want to make it a little tighter, or a little shorter, I should say, and have it be a little snug on your foot, so that way as it loosens up, it should hopefully still work. So you need that. You shouldn't need any scissors right away. You're going to need your normal hook and your crochet hook as well to take this off the end. So all you're going to do is I'm using one strand, but again, as I always say in my videos, it does depend on the size of your yarn. For example, if I were to make one out of Bonnet Baby Blanket, which is really soft, and this is a huge one, there's two Joann's near me about 40 minutes away. One of them doesn't carry this size of skeins for this kind of yarn, and one does. And the other place I get the Bonnet Baby sometimes is Walmart, and they usually come in a smaller skein. But I got a bunch of these because I love doing baby blankets and stuff. And this is very soft, and as you can tell, if you compare it to the Red Heart, you can kind of see the difference in thickness. So I would only need one. So what you're going to do is decide first your yarn size. I only did the E-wrap method through this as well. I want to keep it as simple as possible for you guys. So the first thing I did is a cast on that I do a lot in my videos, the drawstring cast on. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to do that really quick as I'm stepping on everything. Okay, find the end, make your slip knot. Just making my slip knot really quick. So I have my little slip knot. Now the drawstring, you're going to attach your slip knot to the outer peg if you can, and give it a little tug. For right now, just to keep it in place as you're going around to the drawstring. The drawstring, if you remember, is just going back and forth. If you've seen my other video, I'm just going back and forth. In front and then behind pegs until I get all the way to the beginning. That's all I'm doing. Okay, and then once you get back to the beginning, you're going to take that string and you're going to lie it on top of the existing, on the top of the peg, so it looks like this. So some places you'll have 2 strands, some you only have 1. And what you're going to do is you're going to knit over wherever there's 2 strands. That's all I'm doing is knitting over wherever there's 2 strands, because when I'm doing that, what that does is kind of create that effect. So it's only the ones that have 2 strands. Oops. That one didn't work. I totally missed the bottom there. For some reason this yarn wants to fray on me, so it's making it a little trickier. That's all I'm doing for the drawstring. And then you're just going to work yourself around in the E-wrap method. And what you're creating right now is the toe area. That's what the drawstring is creating. It's creating the pocket where your toes are going to go. And part of the upper part of your foot, depending on how enclosed you want your foot in the slipper. If you saw my video, I had part of my foot, obviously out. Okay, and then once you get back here, you're just going to simply E-wrap it. And you're just going to E-wrap around. You're probably going to have to go through and push these strands down. And I worked this up in a pretty quick time frame. I think of like a couple hours on it, when I was not interrupted by my 4-year-old. So it's a kind of a quick project. But if you want to make them matching, obviously you're going to be keeping track of the amount of rows you do with your row counter, marking a piece of paper or something. Because obviously if you're going to do 2 the same, you're going to need to make sure you remember what you did. But this is just to show you the technique that I did. And this technique is actually incorporating part of the technique I use with my fingerless gloves. So that's all we're doing, and then we're going to knit over. And again, you're going to probably want 2 strands of yarn, or to use a bulkier, heavier yarn to do this with. And that's all you're going to do. You're going to keep going around until you get it so that you can drawstring it closed. And the other thing too is once you get it drawstring, getting a couple rows done, you can take it off the hook here and just drop it through the other side, and I'll show you that in a minute. So that is only knitting the bottom over the top. And you can change up what kind of stitch you want to do. Don't feel like you have to do the simple E-wrap. After you do the drawstring, you can change it up to your tighter stitch, which might be a good idea to do a tighter stitch slipper. I'm just going to do the E-wrap right now, but if you want to do the tight stitch, you're going to wrap your pegs 3 times, so there's 3 loops on them, and take the bottom one over the top too. I would almost say doing that would probably be good because it would create a tighter feel than just the E-wrap, which I did here, which you can tell it's pretty loose. So push all those down. And then since you've already kind of locked them in place, you can take this off of that and bring it through the bottom of the other, like just pop it through so that it's going to be on the inside of your project. Use your crochet hook to kind of pull it through. And that's all you want to do is have it hanging, because this is what you're going to use to pull to close off the drawstring if you haven't seen my video. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to keep E-wrapping it around until I get it ready to close off, and then I'll show you what to do from there. This is a continuation of how to do the simple slipper sock that I had showed on Facebook. And basically what you're working on is pieces. Your first part we're working on is basically the toe part, which is up here. That's why we did the drawstring cast on, and we're using the blue loom, and now we're going to be working soon on making the pouch basically for your foot to slide into. So what I did is I worked the loom until I could get it to where I could pull this and have it be the drawstring cast off. The other thing you're going to want is, if you want to make sure you know how many rows you want to do, is get yourself a little row counter. I did not count how many times I did it this time, because this is just a template to show you guys the process. It changes up depending on how big your feet is, depending on the thickness of the yarn you choose to use, or the stitches you choose to use. So there's a lot of factors that go into making even a simple slipper, because there's other factors you got to keep in mind. So get yourself some sort of row counter so that you know how many times you want around to close it off and how many times you need it in general. Now what we're going to do is, like I said, I'm only using 1 strand, so it's going to be pretty lacy through here. Normally you'd probably use 2 strands, this is red heart, or you would try to use a thicker yarn. So we're just going to pull the string that we had hanging down, and you're going to see that it's going to close off. And then that's going to be creating the pouch for your foot to go in. Now, you have 2 choices. You can close it off while it's on the loom so that hole's not there, or you can wait and do it afterwards. I tend to like to do it when it's on the loom because it's a little tighter to work with. Oh, excuse me. So I would use a crochet hook, and I would bring that string through to the other side. So I would just go and poke it through to grab that string and pull it through the other side without my yarn unraveling. Okay, and the other thing you do is quickly just tighten it a little more to see if it closes off. But basically you want to tie it shut so that your toe doesn't peek out. So we're just going to go through and grab that string, if I can, because things aren't cooperating today. Okay, and pull it through the other side. Now, what you have to realize is that depending on which side you're going to want to be on the outside of your foot, like for example, if we would take this apart, I just did the E-wrap so you can kind of see that, but if I'd wanted to, if you turn this inside out, it's a different effect. It's it's the opposite of the knitting. So really it depends on which side design do you like. Do you like this, or do you like the normal E-wrap side? Because what you might want to do is figure out, that determines where you want this to be tied off on, so that way it's not like sticking out the side that people would see. So you're going to just kind of take and put your loop or your crochet hook through one of the loops that are in there and work that string through like that, and you're just going to pull it tight again. Then you're going to find another loop and just a stitch next to it, reach under and grab it and pull it through, but don't pull it through all the way. Create yourself a little loop. Then go through and take the extra string you have and pull that through that loop you just created. Again, it all depends, and that will help kind of like, in a sense, to help tie it off a little bit. The other thing you can do is you can kind of keep doing that. It's kind of making the little loops to put the string through, so that way, and what you can do also is you can have a loop, made yourself a loop, and you have this tail. The other thing you can do is tie it like you would a shoe. To create an additional knot in there. And once you have it secure, you can kind of go back through later and you can kind of trim the extra string. I'm not going to worry about that right now. You can trim it now while it's this way, or you can keep doing whatever process to close that off, and that is going to create the pouch. If this was my foot, these are going to be the toe pouch that we're creating. So that means you have to figure out how far up your foot you'd want it to go. This one, I don't know how many rows I did. It went up to, you saw the picture of it. So it went up my foot a little ways that I liked. But if you want it to go further, then you're going to need to keep making the rows around. So we're going to just quickly do a couple rows. Just simple E-wrapping unless you choose a different stitch. And we're just E-wrapping it around, and we're just going to knit it over. Okay. Now probably if you want to make something kid-like, you would probably not make that, do a lot of the extra rows. You would probably start the next process sooner because you'd want it smaller. So like I said, this is a template. This probably won't fit my foot when I'm done. This is just to show you the steps that I did to make the simple slipper. And I'm just knitting it over like normal, grabbing that bottom strand and pulling it over. So you get back to the beginning. Now, you, like I said, do that for as many rows as you feel you need to do. The next step is what I'm going to show you. You've gone around as many times as you feel you need to for the part of your foot. If you're making these for yourself, like the pair that I had made, I was actually able, my shoes I think a size 8, 8.5, to stick my foot in this pouch, just kind of get an idea. But keep in mind that the yarn does stretch. As you can see, it's going to stretch. So that's the problem I had with this, is when I got done with it, it was actually a little bit too long for me because it's got that stretch. So I should have ended it sooner. And that's what you have to keep in mind, is how much yarn, how much stretch is in the yarn, because that's going to change things up too. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume, excuse me, that we got the pouch the way we want. This will probably come out looking like a kid slipper, but you're going to go around as many times as you feel you need it to cover the part of your toe that you want. So you're at that part, and now you're like, okay, how do I make the opening? Excuse me, I just need to get a drink. Okay, so how are you going to make the opening? It's a simple, it's kind of the same concept I did with my fingerless gloves. And I kind of use this as a guideline, the peg, but you can probably pick any spot on your loom that you want to do. But I kind of use this peg because I felt it was in the middle and I could decide. Now I end up having 5 empty pegs on one side to create my opening. But I don't know if you really need that many. Again, it's going to depend on the size of your foot. If you have a wide foot, or if you're doing this for a man, you may need to open more. It's basically a trial and error thing. That's what a lot of loom knitting is to me, is getting an idea and doing templates of it to see it and tweaking things the way I want. It's always a tweaking process. kind of as one of my fans on Facebook said to one of my things. We're always tweaking things. So what you're going to do, I mean, you can use this as a guideline because it sticks out and makes it easier to kind of see where you are making the hole. And then what you're going to do is simply move some of these loops over to create that empty space. So we're going to move this peg loop over to the one next to it. Don't worry about knitting it over right now. Then we're going to take this loop and put it onto that peg. Okay, and as you can see, what that does is creates two empty pegs. So now go ahead and knit those over. And that's a little small opening we're creating. Because now when we work with, and then I'm going to want it more. I only have 2 empty. I want at least 4. I did 5, like I said, on that one, but I think I would have preferred 4 openings. So which will make it a little easier because you're using this as a guideline. So you know you got 1 empty peg on each side of it. And now we're just going to do that same thing again. I'm not too worried about perfection. It's going on your foot. And you can kind of assess right. So you're going to move that loop over again to the peg next to it. Okay, don't worry about knitting it over yet. Take this loop and move it over to here. Okay. And now go ahead and knit those over. And you will have 4 empty pegs, which will be the opening for your foot. If you're making a kid's one, then chances are you may only need to have an opening of 2 or 3. Because you can do that as well. I mean, it's basically how big of an opening you think you need. And again, the yarn will have a little stretch. Now, if you look on the opposite side, you can kind of see that we're creating a little pouch in there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this string, and we're just going to work back and forth from this peg, all the way around to this peg, and all the way around to this peg. We're not going to be wrapping those. So let me set down my tool, and we're just going to simply E-wrap, or whatever stitch it is that you're choosing to do. And we're going to E-wrap until we get it about the length that we want. Oops, I double wrapped that one. What's nice about this loom is you can pretty much hold it in one hand if your hands are big enough and turn it, so you definitely have more control over this loom than you do some of the other looms. Okay. And then you're going to knit over. What this is creating is that opening for the pouch. Now there are a couple different options. There's been people that have asked me about this other kind of slipper that they saw. And I believe this process I'm doing right now for this one, I think her name's Diana, you could use for that picture that that you had showed me and wanting to convert it from a knit pattern or a crochet pattern, I think it was, to a loom knitting. I believe this is the same process you would do, except you would tweak some things. You wouldn't close it off. You wouldn't close the slipper off in the end like we're going to do. You wouldn't excuse me, because you'd want it to go further up your leg. And Diana, I believe, if you don't understand that, just private message me and I will send you some more information on it. Okay, so what we're going to do, now because I'm kind of getting annoyed by this, I'm just going to quickly give this a little trim so it's not hanging down in my way as much. And like I said, you're going to get that as secure as you can so that, and a way to tell is just pushing through, is your fingers popping through. That lets you know how secure you got it. Now, like I said, we're just going to be working back and forth because now our slipper is actually moving this way. If you go like this, you can kind of see, oh, the string's in your way, that we're creating the opening. Like this is the toes, this is the opening for the foot. So now we're just going to keep going back and forth until we get it the length that we want. And then we will have to close back off these pegs and take it off the loom in order to close it off completely. But if you're that woman, Diana, that was talking about the other pattern, you wouldn't worry about closing it off. You would keep doing this for as long as you wanted it to go up your ankle and lower leg, shin. I can't think of what the leg part is called. You would not close it off like we're going to do, and you would keep going with it that way and keep it as a flat panel. So I knit it over. Okay. And that's all you're going to do is you're going to keep creating that opening for as many times around as you need it to be. And again, you can kind of check it every so often and see, kind of maybe measure your foot from toe to heel and get an idea of how long your foot is. And then probably subtract maybe an inch or so from that process because of the stretchability. So, you know, if your foot is an actual 12 inches long, then you maybe would only make your slipper to be 10 or 11 inches and see how that goes. Okay, so, oops, stay there. Alright, so I'm going to push these all down. Now what you're going to do again is you're going to go for as long as you need it to be for the length. You're going to be working, because this is where we started, you're going to be working to create that opening as big as you need it to be. So like I said, if you're doing it with kids, you might only do it this much. You might do it longer, but that's what we're working on. Okay. Like I said, this is just a template. It's not going to really be much of anything when I get this done. Might fit on my child's doll. But, so you're going to do that. And you're going to obviously use 2 strands, unless you like the lacier look. The other suggestion I have is, because the yarn can be slippery, is to find something you can put on the bottom of it to give it a little gripping, because you don't want to fall. Depending on where you live, whether you have hardwood floors or not, it's going to be a little slippery if you've never made these kind of slippers before. So maybe find something that you could put on the bottom just to give it a little rougher texture. I think there's some stuff you can get at like a local craft store that you could probably attach to the bottom just to give yourself a little traction. So I'm going to do, where's my string? I'm going to go back again one more time, and then I'm going to show you how you would close this off if you were ready to. Okay, so like I said, you're just going to keep working until you get that opening, what you feel you need it to be for your foot. You may decide you want a littler opening so it's a little more snug fit. It's going to be up to you. Okay. Knit this over. Okay, and now what you have to do is you have to start, if you're going to, closing off those pegs that we had opened, if you're at the point in the slipper that you need to close it off. You want this to kind of, you're working on the part of closing the back off a little bit. But you also don't have to. I said that's the other cool thing, is you don't necessarily have to close off those looms. That's actually, it's 2 ways you can do it. You can close off those pegs if you want, which I did on here, and you really can't notice it that much. Or what you can actually do is keep it as a flat panel and sew it together. So I would probably say the easier thing to do would be to keep it as a flat panel coming off and sew the pieces together versus going through and trying to block off those. I think that would be easier for you to do. I was just playing around. That was my template, and that's one of the things I would modify. Like I said, if you're that one woman that was looking about the other slipper idea, this is what you would keep doing. You would keep working it to be that opening, which is right there. And then all you're going to do is you're going to get a crochet hook, and we're going to cast it off as a flat panel. If I can get the thing. Okay. So you're going to make it as long as you want for your foot, or to even like go up your leg a little bit. Then what you're going to do is you're going to create as a flat panel. So you're going to have your yarn, and you're probably going to need to do like a chain or 2 in between just to kind of make it a little flexible. And you put it on your crochet hook. Probably do maybe 1 chain in between, because you can give this a little stretch when it's off. This yarn is fraying, so it's kind of not liking me. And then you're going to grab the next loop, put that on, take the back over the front, give it a little tug, do 1 chain, that, grab the next one. Okay, give the working yarn a little tug. See what I'm doing here? Creating a loop. Creating that. And giving the working yarn just a little tug. And what's cool is you can modify this when you get it off. You can put little pom-poms up by the toes. You can put a little flower maybe up there. You can simply make a bow and put it on the end if you want to decorate your slipper. That's what I thought was pretty cool, is you can kind of modify it how you need it. Yeah. And depending on the yarn you're using, it'll work a lot better. Come on. Alright. Working our way around Loom. So we're creating that, so it's like taking it and making it a flat panel a little bit so we can close it off and create it into our wonderful little slipper. Okay. Oops. I hate when I lose stuff. Get back on there. And I mean, you can lay it on your chest like I'm doing and just kind of work your way around. And you may decide, well, I'll do chains in between in the beginning, but then I don't really need them. Like I said, you're going to be sewing this together. I just prefer to do that to give it a little more stretch if I need it to be. And probably what we're doing right here might even create like a little baby booty. A little better than the other baby booty video I had. Okay, we're almost there. Turning it as we go if you're able to. And this worked up fairly fast when I did it before. So I don't think this kind of project would take too long. You'd probably be able to make, you know, a pair in a day, depending on how much time you have to work on it. Now keep in mind this is going to look a little different than we normally do because we didn't go that far on it. So, excuse me. Almost to the end. Now the other thing you can do, once I get this off and I'll show you. Okay, this is the last loop. That falls down. Okay. To help close it off a little bit too, as you can see that there's a big gap. That's, you know, what you're going to do, create your last loop, and what you can do to help close it off too, is go across, again, not baby booty, oops. You can go across with that last loop because this is the flat panel that you're creating, because this is the way the shoe would go, and you can actually join the two top ones together because you have that loop, and then you're going to go right over to the other side and grab one of the loops there and pull it through just like you have been doing the whole time, and that will kind of help join those two ends to make it easier. And then you just got to find where they meet, and you still have your crochet hook, and you can work on closing off the rest of that side. And the other thing you may need to do is cut yourself some yarn, and I always say cut more than what you need because that way you don't run out. So I just snipped it so that I would have some to work with to close off the side that's our opening, because this is our part right here that our foot would go in. And what you can do, excuse me, is it's pretty good too if you don't do a lot of color changes, just because that would make it hard to match up until you get better at it. But we worked that through, and then you can just kind of whip stitch it. Now you have to decide where you want the seam to be. If you want the seam on the inside, then you're going to gently turn it inside out. Okay, and you're going to finish closing it on the inside. So that way you don't see the seam on the outside. We're just pulling the string we have through to help close off the ending of the slipper. Which, like I said, doesn't look like much of a slipper right now because A, I used one strand, and B, I didn't make it as long as the other. I just wanted to show you the steps. Now, if you're Diana and you want to make this the other way, what you wouldn't do is you wouldn't be closing off this back thing. You would not be closing off. You'd leave it open, and you'd have your long tube, and then you would just make your shoelace kind of things, and you would just create holes and wind it up through, if that makes any sense. Just go ahead and message me on Facebook. If it doesn't, I may do a tutorial to explain more what I'm talking about for that other shoe at some point. I just wanted to get this video up like I had promised. So that's all you're going to do is you kind of work on closing that off, keeping it closed, and then tying a knot and all that to keep it from coming off. And then you would turn it back inside out. And like I said, this isn't much right now because it wasn't the length it needed to be. But you would have your slipper because you would have your opening for your foot. And you could actually make a little baby booty if we made it up a little more, like we had made the length a little more. Then you would have your little opening for your foot to go in, and it would create the spot for your toes. So that's how you would do a little simple slipper sock. I mean, keeping in mind of how long you need it to be for you, because like I said, I did mine, and I could have actually made it a little shorter. So I didn't do any kind of heel work in it because it's just a flat panel cross. I played around with a different stitch over here. But that's all you're going to do is you're going to create the opening. If you want to end up closing it off on excuse me, on the loom, then all you would do is, as you're wrapping back and forth, you would add in a peg that you had that was empty. So you'd wrap one and go back the other way, wrap one until you got enough loops on there to do the stitch work you were doing, and that would also kind of help join the back together a little bit too. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. It's basically what you are comfortable with and what you want to do for the project. So I hope this has helped. I hope I explained it well enough. Again, if there's any questions, just leave them in the comment area below and I'll do my best to answer them. And I look forward to making some more videos for you guys. Now the only problem I have now is that I don't have a remote for this camera. So I have to move closer to shut it off. So have a good day, everyone.